All right, great. Thank you very much. Hey everyone, my name is Uwe Fassnacht and I'm the product director for IBM Cloud Code Engine that we're going to be talking about during this session. And with me is Doug Davis, our technical product manager as well, who's going to be doing most of the demos. If you go to the next slide, Doug, we have a very loose agenda. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about what is IBM Cloud Code Engine, which has just been launched about 6 weeks ago, so quite new still, and many of you probably have not heard of it. And we are going to try to do this as sort of interactive and as much demo as possible. So we're going to have lots and lots and lots of demo and showing you the product live after we have a first introduction of PowerPoint slides. At any time in this session, ask us in the chat. Doug and myself and a colleague of ours, Simon Moser, who's actually the lead architect on Code Engine, are going to be monitoring the the chat, and we're going to be giving live, answers to your questions. If something is like really interesting and not as easy explainable in the chat, we are actually going to say, hey, let's talk about this question and sort of pick up your question and talk about it. So please, let's make it interactive, ask us questions, interact with us. And with that, I think we're going to get going. And next slide, please, Doug. Next one is good. What is IBM Cloud Code Engine? And we've thought about this a lot, what our tagline should be for the product. And we've arrived at run any code, which talks about how universal a platform this is, do it easily through a beautiful user interface, go live immediately, and at the scale of the cloud. So sort of those are our three design pillars: any code, any workload, super easy to get started, super easy, beautiful user experience that we're going to be showing, and then run it up at scale as high as you want to. And then also, as soon as your workloads are done, maybe your apps are not receiving any traffic, Code Engine will automatically scale them down to 0 and will stop charging you. So it's truly pay as you go, charged on 100 millisecond intervals. Okay, so that's sort of what Code Engine is. Sounds a bit magic, doesn't it? If you go to the next slide. Doug, if you click on the next slide, please.
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying. I'm not quite sure why it's not moving. Hold on. There we go. Weird. Sorry about that.
Perfect. Thank you. Right. So this is the initial question that we've asked ourselves when we developed IBM Cloud Code Engine. What if sort of getting your stuff, your workloads, deploying them to the cloud would be as easy as sort of coding on your laptop, right? And this gets us to three value propositions of Code Engine. The first one is we want our users to get back to focusing on code, on features, on rolling out functionality to their customers and not worry about all the plumbing underneath. That's the first one. The second one is truly pay as you go, scale down to 0, pay nothing, scale up if you need more, and pay exactly for the resources that you're actually consuming. And the third one is one single experience to learn that will allow you to deploy containers and serverless functions, and that is going to allow you to deploy source code. So sort of deploy any workload, do it super easily, and pay by the drink. Okay, let's talk about three specific customers that are sort of going to illustrate these points, and then we're going to step very quickly into the demo. First one is one of our launch customers, SIP Solutions. If you're interested in this use case, there is a talk tomorrow, I think, between myself and the CTO of SIP Solutions, and we're going to be talking about exactly this use case. And the idea here is this is a very high-tech startup that is basically doing logistics in a logistics warehouse. They're doing a solution with artificial intelligence. They're analyzing video streams. They're automatically finding pallets that have been misplaced or placed incorrectly and things like that. So they are very focused on rolling out new, very advanced technological features to their customers quickly because they're a startup. Now, this specific customer, they have skills around Kubernetes. They know what a container is. They would be able to configure networking and ingress and egress controllers and things like that, all this sort of plumbing underneath. But that's not where they want to spend their engineering resources. Where they want to spend their engineering resources is to actually roll out new technology versus the plumbing underneath, right? So they want someone else to worry about the infrastructure that they don't want to touch. They want that to be secured by us. They want that to be managed and upgraded by us. But there's also an additional factor here. They want all of that based on open source technologies because they don't want to feel locked in, right? Anytime they could take their workloads and run it on another cloud or even run it directly on these open source technologies. All right, next slide, please. This is another customer that we have, and this is the European Microbiology Lab here in Germany. They have a different use case for Code Engine. What they want to do is they want to scale up massively to do very advanced biological simulations, actually to find pharmaceutically interesting proteins. So they want to build their IT department wants to build a platform for their researchers that when new data comes in, these researchers can quickly access that data, can that scale simulations out using that data, can analyze that data, and then sort of all bring it back down to zero on the weekends or when the data is analyzed or something like this. So pay-per-use, scale only, scale down to zero if it's not in use anymore. Cool. Next slide, please. And this is our third customer, an airline. And what they are very interested in, they have a sort of a microservice-based architecture, which is hybrid. They have some things that they want to run in-house. They have other things that they want to run in forms of applications. So HTTP serving apps, for example, a customer-facing front end. This specific solution is actually one where they are ingesting data, for example, competitors' pricing information and things like that. They're just taking that data, massively scaled out batch jobs, putting that data into these batch jobs, generating machine learning models. Once that's done, they want that collapse back down to zero. Right? Once that's done, they want to then take that data and serve it up to customers through an HTTP serving website. So what they want to have is they want to have one single unified experience to deploy these different kinds of workloads, and they want to be able to, for these workloads to communicate through the Code Engine internal platform for secure networking. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. These are sort of the 4 different types of personas that we are addressing with Code Engine. And I'm sort of looking at the chat right now. In the chat, actually, and this is a perfect question here, is, hey, how is this different from AWS Lambda? AWS Lambda, if you look at that chart, would be situated all the way on the right-hand side, serverless functions developer. So to illustrate that Code Engine is so much more, let's start on the left-hand side. And the left-hand side would be a developer that is what I would call container savvy, right? Maybe Docker is running on the laptop, they understand what a container image is, they know how to build one, they have that container image running on the laptop. Yep, looks good. I want to run that container on the cloud. What I do not want, right, what I do specifically not want, is I don't want to be bothered about Kubernetes and size a cluster and stand up the cluster and secure the cluster and worry about all the Kubernetes weirdness like, ingress and egress and things like that. Update that cluster, maybe size that cluster, scale it up and down. I just want to have a container. I want that container to be placed in the cloud. I want that container to run in the cloud at scale. Right? If it receives more traffic, scale up and scale back down. And just like serverless, once it doesn't receive any more traffic, I want to be stopped charging for that container. So that's sort of a classic container savvy developer. The second kind of developer that we're addressing here is like a PaaS developer. Think of someone that would be using Heroku or that would be using Cloud Foundry, for example. This is a developer that doesn't know what a container is. They don't know what a container is. They don't know what a Kubernetes cluster is or an image. They just have source code. And they want to deploy that source code magically out to the cloud, just like they are used to with Cloud Foundry or Heroku. The third type of developer is someone that might not even think of themselves as a developer at all, right? This is someone that is a batch job submission person. They have maybe, I don't know, let's say videos that are stored in an object store. And they want to launch a massive batch job to take all these videos out, compress them, and put them into another object store, right? And when that has to be done, it needs to scale out to do all these videos in parallel. And once those videos are all compressed, we want to scale back down to 0 and stop paying. That's very similar, by the way, to that EMBL customer use case that we were talking about earlier. And then finally, we come to the serverless, the function, the person that might be using like something like AWS Lambda today, they have a small snippet of code that is triggered usually, and they want to run that in event-driven workloads. And again, that is also one of the use cases that Code Engine handles. So the idea behind Code Engine is to have a unified, one single platform to handle all these different workloads with one experience.